I'm going to read a July 4th meditation by the Reverend Maureen Kelleran. It's called 4th of July Meditation. But at the end of each verse, she says, "And I am an American." So when we get to that point, I would like everybody to join in at the end when we start with, "And I am an American." Spirit of life and love, I come before you, black and brown and red and yellow and alabaster. I come longing for the simpler days that truly never were our lot. And I am an American. Hear these voices as in the complexity of our days. I am humanist and Christian, Muslim and Jew, pagan and atheist and Buddhist and UU. And I am an American. I am one who fought for my country, and I am at the same time one who protested war. And I am an American. Amongst the divisions of our days, I've struggled in poverty and accepted the profits of wealth. And I am an American. I am an owner of weapons, and I am one who would control our nation's guns by limiting who's and what's and how's. And I am an American. As light is shown on our divisions, I live with often unacknowledged privilege, and I am moved to rage at the complexity of intersecting oppressions. And I am an American. In the challenge of our days, I am one who supports my country, right or wrong, and I am one who claims the traditions of dissent. And I am an American. In this polarized season, I am Democrat and I am Republican, I am Libertarian and I am Independent, I am green and I am confused. And I am an American. Spirit of hope, sit with us in our diversities. Help us hear one another in our divisions. Grant that beginning in this community, we may honor one another's truths and know that a just and faithful tomorrow begins here in our hearts. For with all the problems, with all our pain, and with all our limitations and mistakes, we are Americans.
For those folks that don't know me, I'm Jim Alexander. Been around the Unitarian community for quite some time in a lot of different places. They asked me today to do a couple things, but the first thing I got to do, I'm sure somebody saw me take off my watch and put it up here. We had a minister in the Methodist church I attended, and he would do that same thing. And one day I said, "Mom, why is he doing that?" And said, "We don't have no idea." I'm going to talk a little bit about patriotism today, and knowing the Unitarian community as I do, if we had 2 hours discussing it, there'd be at least 4 or 5 different opinions of what it really is. There's a slight difference maybe between nationalism and patriotism, but many times they're really the same. You pick out the one you like. One that I found, that patriotism is protecting the land where you live. Notice that, protecting the land where you live. And nationalism is protecting the way we live. There is a difference. I'm going to do this in several different parts. And the first part I call BM. That's before Martha. Martha's my wife. I think I just saw her fall out of her chair over here. I grew up in a small Ohio town, a little bigger than Clemson. We always said to pledge allegiance to the flag every day in school. How many of you folks did that when you were growing up? Great. I was afraid there wouldn't be that many hands going up. Great. There was a flag in every classroom, in every school. There were pictures of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. I think many of you would remember, at least some of you would remember that. I just noticed that I think I'm the elder here today, so everything I say is true. There were many parades in my hometown, but probably the biggest ones was 4th of July. And that was kind of special to me because my Uncle Raul, who had served in World War I, marched in that parade as a member of the American Legion. and often had a chance to carry the American flag. I guess that's where it started, where I started getting patriotic to some degree. The parade went by my house on River Street on the way to the cemetery, where they would have a 21-gun salute. And I think the only reason they did that was because the old guys carrying the flag and so on loved to shoot the guns. My father wasn't a veteran, but I do remember him serving as an air raid warden. Anybody know what air raid wardens were in World War II? Saw a few hands. They were the people who went around and checked when they had a practice event saying, oh, we might be attacked, so turn out all your lights and don't let any lights leak out, because, well, we knew that we were going to be bombed because we lived near Dayton, Ohio, 30 miles away, but somebody was going to bomb us. We just knew that. I guess another reason to be patriotic. I remember the end of World War II and all our church bells ringing in our town. Later on, while I was in high school, I was given the opportunity to lead the high school students in saying the pledge before every student assembly. I hope that is still being done. After graduating from high school, I had the chance to go to the Air Force Academy. Kind of brainwashed me. It wasn't much of a wash since I have a very small brain. They did an excellent job, I think. And again, major effort in making me more patriotic. At the academy, I learned to march like my Uncle Raw, or maybe a little better than he marched. I didn't realize that patriotism would teach me how to march, and then it would have so many benefits. It taught me that if I marched to classes, I was going to get an extremely good education. And more important maybe, marching to the dining hall, I got fed. The next part of this discussion is AM. Okay, everybody know what that is? After Martha. After meeting and marrying Martha, I learned she too was very patriotic. She slept with George Washington every night before going to college. Okay, I'm going to let that sink in for a second. There was a picture of George Washington on her bedroom wall. Our married life allowed us to visit many different countries and a number of different states. In fact, our oldest son was born in Panama. During the visits to other countries, you soon learn how to become more patriotic. Looking at the eyes of other people around you in foreign countries, you can see they want to be free just like we are. I need a quick show of hands that anybody went to military training, basic training somewhere? A couple. One of the things that you do quite often is you learn to march, move as a group. Well, I've marched in many parades at both the academy and at many air bases around the world. And one of the key commands that they use to get this parade started is pass and review. Pass and review. Sometimes you wonder, do we pass and review on a daily basis? I think we do. We're out there going forward, trying to do the right things. Again, there aren't many old folks in here, but elderly, mature. December 7th, 1941. I hope some of you folks know what that was. That was the attack on Pearl Harbor, which changed the way we lived in the United States for sure. We had another major impact on our country a few years ago, September the 11th, 2001. Many of you, I'm sure, remember that. Again, it changed how we operate, but I think it also reminded us that we should be patriotic. And that was one of the few times that I really was super proud of our country, because all our politicians took off their stupid political hats and put on, we are a citizen. You know, we lost about 3,000 people on that dreadful day in September. Since that time, we've had over 3.5 million military folks join the armed services. Many of them had to serve in the middle part of the world that we hear about still on a regular basis. What may be more important, there's over 55 million of us who were born since that happened. 55 million. We need to never forget what happened, and we need to educate those who were not around when that happened, what went on and what we need to do to make us better and hopefully keep us headed the right way. I call that part of patriotism. One of the things that's going on in Oconee County is an effort to build a 9/11 Memorial Park very close to Walhalla High School. It's been underway for a number of years now, but we're finally moving dirt, and I think it's going to happen. It will have a timeline where you can go through, use your smartphones, iPads, all that kind of stuff, learn about what happened at various times. But if that doesn't make you patriotic when you visit, I'm not sure anything will. I hope you'll do that once it's done and finished. I'm very proud to be an American, and I plan to serve my country in every way I can, as long as I can. I believe very strongly in patriotism, and one of the things, or several of the things that helps me do, I vote in every election. I stand up for the national anthem, and I know the words. I stand tall when the U.S. flag goes by on a parade, and I'll never forget those who have served our country. I hope you'll stand tall also.
After Jim stood tall, I figured I needed the box. So lately, I've been troubled enough to wonder if I still am proud to be an American. It's been kind of tough lately. When I was a child, it was easy to believe baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet made America a great country. 40 years later, I'm not so sure. Are we a great country? We built the national park system, but we also polluted the Mississippi and Louisiana. We created an extensive public education system, but teachers are among the lowest paid professions in the country, and they frequently leave because of over-testing and pressure from parents. We gave women the right to vote, but only after Canada, Britain, and Finland did, and women are still fighting for equality in many fronts. In a land where people will pay $80 for a pair of flip-flops, and others are working 3 jobs just to pay the basic bills, I wonder where we've gone wrong. I wrote this when I was at the beach. However, I try to remember the words of Mark Ruffalo, aka the Incredible Hulk, and more importantly, a social activist, who said, if you're losing hope, then you're not doing enough. And I may not be a political scientist or an anthropologist, but I've been creating that direct mail you throw in your recycling bin after you get it out of the mailbox for much of my career as a graphic designer. And so while my thesis may not hold up to defense, you're going to walk out with a few calls of action, because that's what we do in direct mail. So the one thing we do in America really well is entertain. And I knew this was going to be a multi-gen service. So I have some movie quotes for everyone. And my RE kids, I know you're out there. I want you to tell me what the movie's from, or what the quote's from, what movie, okay? So here's the first one. With great power comes great responsibility. Henry? Bingo. Good job. So I would argue that the American people are cynical about our leadership because too many have abused their position. These days, it's nearly impossible to win without the help of corporate money. Many feel our government is bought and paid for by large causes that are not always in the interest of the average American. I would say that this is pretty much how I feel. In America, leadership is a choice, and it is not something to which you are born. Now, I watched The Crown on Netflix. If you've not watched it, it's really, really good, and you should watch it. And it shows this challenge of being born into the royal family and not having a choice. You are born with a sense of duty and responsibility, and if you are not the chosen one, then you really aren't doing anything. So it's really interesting to watch that burden of responsibility and how they deal with it. But here in the United States, you can be born in a log cabin and be president, theoretically. But leadership is really hard because difficult decisions are always going to disappoint someone. Our Senator Lindsey Graham, when he came here for the town hall, he told us elections have consequences. This implies that he only represents those that supported him through money or votes instead of the interests of the entire community. So real leaders make decisions that build a better world for the greater good. Before the latest transfer of power in D.C., I cannot recall reaching out to my representatives one single time because it felt pointless. But now, I do Telephone Tuesday. Sometimes it's not on a Tuesday, maybe on a Thursday. It depends on if I have something to call about. I reach out to them at least once a week, either by phone or fax. If you don't know about ResistBot, look it up. Super easy to use. And I know I haven't changed their mind on anything because after I call or fax them, they vote in a completely different way than what I have suggested. But I remind them that I'm here. I remind them I'm in their district and that I love this district as much as they do, and I deserve to be heard. Second quote. You ready, kids? You listening? Do or do not. There is no try. Henry, you already had one. Claire? Anyone? All right, Henry. Star Wars. Who said it? Yoda. Yoda. Do or do not. There is no try. I say this to my daughter all the time. She doesn't appreciate it. Find your community and commit to it. And I'll point out, y'all are all sitting here. Okay? So pat yourself on the back. You're here. You've done the first step. Now participate. Every committee here needs your help. I guarantee you, everyone is stressed and needs your help. So step up. I remind my committee chairs of something Georgianne Stafford, some of you guys remember Georgianne, right? She asked us once what we might do if this community wasn't here. What would you do if this community wasn't here? It's what's kept me coming sometimes when it's been really hard, when things have been tough. Humans are a social species. We do better when we work together. So go to public forums. Join civic organizations. We have more than a few here. We have the Sierra Club, we have Indivisible, we have League of Women Voters, we have postcard parties. If you want to know more about that, talk to Susanna Ashton. If you wish to be less political, you join the Rotary Club. I think of them when we run down the Doodle Trail and see the bike station halfway there. They contribute that to the community. We can be heard if we join together. Next quote. Ready? Assemble the minions. Oh, come on, kids. Despicable Me, anyone? Come on. Tip O'Neill is credited with saying, all politics is local. So here's a little story about making a difference. My colleague and friend Heidi, a real inspiration, actively made her voice heard the minute her kids were enrolled in public school. She went to meetings and spoke up. She wrote letters. She wrote letters to the papers. She now lunches with board members. She may have more power not being on the board than being on the board. That 7th seat, Heidi was actively involved in making sure that happened. The people that are on the board now, she actually asked some of them to run herself. Betty Bagley, Betty Garrison, Shannon Haskett. She not only helped recruit them, she campaigned for them, and she had a hand in getting them elected. If the national scene is too depressing and overwhelming, start where it really, truly impacts your life. Start local. Okay, now this quote's for the adults. I'm fed up and I'm not going to take it anymore. Network. Be careful how and what media you consume. I honestly believe, and I know this is cynical, but here it is, most TV news is designed to create fear. As a result, you stay glued to the seat, afraid to leave the house, which means TV news is rewarded for creating hysteria for higher ratings. Read responsible journalism, share thoughtfully. Even better, get off Facebook and meet people face to face. Facebook sharing is called slacktivism for a reason. Wow, that Facebook article post really changed my mind, said no one ever. If you're brave like my friend Patrick, you'll canvass and knock on doors and make phone calls. If you're not, send postcards. One more quote. I don't know if anyone's going to know this one. It's a marathon, not a sprint, but I still got to win the race, yeah. Anyone? Drake? No? No Drake fans? Okay. Change is slow. Keep going. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Keep fighting for what you believe in. As Mahershala Ali, an award-winning Muslim African-American actor, said in GQ magazine, quote, "I absolutely love this country, but like so many people, have some real questions and concerns about how things have gone down over the years and where we're at. And that's from a place of love, because I want the country to be what it says it is on paper." Me too, and I'm willing to fight for it.
And now, balancing acts. I began this reflection by saying, this is my opinion based on my life experience. You glean from it what you want. A little background. I come from a family rich in military service. I have traced my family's military service back to the War of 1812. My father was a World War II veteran who served in the 3rd Army under General Patton. My husband Joe served in the Navy during the Vietnam War, and my son John served in the First Gulf War, a story you will hear related today. As we strive to be patriotic through service to our country, we also strive to be patriotic through dissent and speaking out against oppression. Let us not forget there is a fine balance between them. In a time where there is partisanship on both sides of the spectrum, we as Americans need to look beyond it and balance rigidity with leniency. We can go too far to the left as well as too far to the right. Why is compromise such a hard word in the world today? We are an enormous human family living together on this planet. We come from diverse backgrounds, varying theologies, races, cultures, and experiences. And we do not march to the step of one beat. If we try hard enough, I think we could find that balance. I began with a reading of the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, which was ratified December 5th, 1791. It says, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances." So when my son John was activated to deploy to Al-Kharj, a remote place outside Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, in December of 1990, I was devastated as a mother. He was only 19 years old, and he had joined the Air National Guard in order to serve his country, but also at the same time, he knew he would get great GI benefits, and that would help him out as he finished college. My son was philosophic about the abrupt turn of events when Iraq invaded the small nation of Kuwait on August 2nd, 1990. He knew he would probably be activated and deployed because he served in the 240th Combat Communications Squadron in the Air National Guard. While he felt that this war would be about oil, he also knew that he had sworn an oath to serve. On a cold night in late December 1990, he boarded a bus from McIntyre Air Base to Shaw Air Base in Sumter. From there, his squadron was flown on large government transports to Al-Kharj, which would become the largest air wing in the world. Though I did not know at the time where he was even going. We were not told because it would be a secret until it was found out when the first Scuds began to hit outside Riyadh. One of the last conversations my son and I had that evening before the bus left was about my upcoming protest, because I was a protest mom, the next morning against a proposed curfew for teens in Richland County, South Carolina. Many residents felt it was written in coded language to oppress minorities and the poor, since many of them worked past the time of the curfew and would be subject to be stopped by the deputies. My son said, "Mom, I want you to show up tomorrow and be on that panel on TV, and I want you to exercise your free speech. My job is to defend that freedom for you." The next day I got up, and you guessed it, I was on TV, and I was at a rally at the courthouse later that day. I was exercising the free speech and the right to peacefully protest, which is guaranteed by the Constitution and paid for by my forefathers, my father, my husband, and now my son. On January 16, 1990, the war began, 4 days after his 20th birthday. On January 12th, I protested in a peaceful No Blood for Oil march in downtown Columbia. On January 16th, I went to a prayer vigil at the nearby Episcopal Church that had begun as soon as the news of the war was announced on television that evening. And the next day, I was at an all-morning prayer vigil sponsored by the local denominations in Columbia. But I felt I had to do more. Many of our families were suffering hardships as a result of the deployment. I joined and helped lead the family support group. I sent messages via email on the old message boards. Who remembers the old message boards? Not many people. It was before Al Gore invented the internet. So for a letter, we wanted to send letters. I got the job because my son was always, trying to get into the Pentagon long before he saw the movie about getting war games, and that's what he wanted to do. And so he had a Commodore 128. That's how long ago it was. But they had it all fixed up so you could get on those message boards, and it only took 2 days for a message to get to Saudi Arabia. Now it's like, what, a second? So that was my first job, because sometimes we had emergencies. People had wrecks, children got sick, and so instead of them finding out through gossip on a phone, because we did have call me cards that the troops could call you back with, I would be the person that would email that message that they'd get there in a day and a half. I also decided that it was really important to help boost the morale. So I sent newspaper clippings, newsprint, cartoons, cookies, snacks, anything I could find that I thought would make them laugh during the day because they were working 12-hour shifts. I also got to know the military brass, and they were very kind to us, those of us who were left behind. We organized get-togethers to share information and to vent. It was like Army Wives, long before Army Wives was a TV show. Protests against the war continued. One in particular was being organized by Brett Bursey, a well-known protester in the 60s against the Vietnam War. He was known to organize large marches and target military personnel. Our family knew him. He knew John. They had worked together on the set of Modern Love in 1989. They had broken bread together. When I heard that he was organizing a large protest, and I had heard it would be leveled against the troops as well as the government, I crossed the divide. I called him. I asked, No, I pleaded with him to change the rules just a little. Would it be possible to aim his anger at the government and not the men and women who were serving? We talked for a short while. I hung up, not knowing what decision would be. It was his alone. When the protest happened, the incendiary language of his past protest was gone. The protesters marched peacefully. In March, the war was over. It was time to bring the troops home. I organized 35 homecomings for Air National Guard troops and worked on Columbia's Welcome Home Parade. My son returned home in June, safe from physical harm, but no longer a young, carefree college kid, but who had left, but a more mature, quiet man. What were the lessons from this experience? First, I learned that free speech, political protest in a responsible way can affect change. In the instance of the curfew, folks heard us. It was defeated. I learned that conflict can unite us in ways that we do not understand. I learned that just because somebody was kind of a military higher up, it did not mean that they were less impacted by the war than me. The colonel who I worked with most had a son deployed, and he was deployed in my son's unit. Working with the military to reach out to military families and being a safe port in the storm helped me understand how important it is that we all pull together. But most of all, I realized that picking up the phone or meeting with people who have different politics and seeking common ground makes a difference. Donna Brazile said, "A government of, by, and for the people require that people talk to people, that we can agree to disagree, but do so in civility." I cannot say that my phone call was the only reason Brett changed the tenor of his march. It could be he was older and more mature, but I know that making that phone call was important for me to speak up and for me to cross the divide and have a meaningful dialogue. Jackson Schroeder, in an article he wrote just yesterday on free speech and the right to protest on U.S. college campuses, said, "Protest is a powerful and necessary tool which serves as a civilian's weapon, but when used thoughtlessly, it only loses value and separates people. Protests must be double-checked as an effective method toward achieving reform." And he went on to say, an example of a recent impactful protest was the Women's March, which was a worldwide protest for human rights. It included millions of people, but the largest congregation of people was in Washington, D.C., and the protest was entirely peaceful and resulted in no arrest. He also said protest is a crucial weapon in the artillery of our First Amendment. Free speech and the right to protest serve as the backbone of American liberty. So let us go forth this July weekend and stop and remember those who founded this republic and those who have had the courage to stand up and call us to be a better America, using our rights to free speech and protest. It is imperative that we are mindful of views other than our own. We can work together to make this nation the best that it can be, always remembering the importance of the balancing act that needs to happen if we are to bring this nation together and do the best for our own common good. Just like our very important rooster, Charlie, today, we need to work and consider all our work important and make this place make it a much better place. And understand that is, as Charlie said, a very, very, very important job. So let it be.